As a foreign language learner myself, and obviously taught also, to me, reading with a dictionary is a painful experience, depending on how many words I have to look up. So I will share with you that if a student has to look up every word or every other word on a page, we know that we've given them a text or a book that's too hard for them. We want to kind of find a balance here. And one of the ways we're going to do that in this project is by taking advantage of cognates. So let's talk about the benefit of extensive reading now that I've told you what it is. According to the research, it's more than just reading. It's actually an effective and promising way of developing foreign language abilities. Think about that across the domains, across the skills. And the other thing is, from research, we know that it develops good reading habits that build up knowledge of vocabulary and structure. And you can see immediately how those transfer over from simply reading to the other language skills that we want our students to develop. And here's the thing we need to know about extensive reading and research also, that reading comprehension for students improved when students read just above and just below their language ability. So that's telling us something about the level of texts, books we want to provide our students. In addition, for students who are in earlier stages of language learning, listening while reading seems to be more effective than silent extensive reading. So we're going to keep those things in mind as we move forward with the project that I want to share with you today. And now I, really want to step into the project itself. So I've selected a theme, and I know this could be a theme that may apply only to younger children. When you see the texts, you may look at it differently, though. They're not young children's texts. They are early language learners' texts, but they are nonfiction. So I really want you to know that up front, that I went for something that I thought could appeal to older students also. But I do want to share with you that these are themes, of course, that you can choose as you see fit. This is just an example for you. And what I did then was simply laid out my plan. So you can see I have a table here where I know what the expectations are for my students. And I actually want you to know this is something that I will share openly with my students. So the theme I have selected is dinosaurs, which makes you know this is going to be a class project. The resources I'm going to use are the myON digital books, and I've listed the 4 book titles here. And you can see they're all dinosaurs. This project includes 2 learning projects along the way. I'm going to use graphic organizers and a poster, and my students are going to do that. And then the outcome of this project is for them to do a presentation to the class. So they will be put in groups for this. And finally, I've also listed the language focus, the skills that will be addressed in this project, and even, in fact, the grammar points. And you'll be able to see that the books and the activities that I provided for students here as examples do those things very simply without you spending a lot of time thinking through all of those details. Because as a teacher, I have to say one of the things that always matters to me is whenever someone provides me with a new suggestion of how I may do something, it has to be practical for me. It has to be something that I can build into my already busy schedule, because teachers are busy. All right, so we're going to start by looking at the resources because you already know the theme. And I want to remind you that these are authentic materials, meaning these are books written for native speakers of English. And that's one of the beauties of this. I happen to personally love the ability to provide authentic materials that are at the right level to students who are still learning language. I think that the diversity of vocabulary and grammatical structure access that students have with authentic materials is life-changing if you provide the right materials. So these are the 4 books I've selected, and what I'm showing here are Lexile levels. Now, if you have worked with myON books before, these books are leveled by something called Lexiles, and Lexile is essentially a scaled score range given to a text, in this case books, based on generally the length of the sentence and the word frequency. This Lexile scale works off actually corpus linguistics. So Higher frequency words are considered more heavily because they're used more frequently. So I wanted to give you a sense of that. These are the books I've selected, and that's because I believe this will provide input at the right level for even early learners. Now, the 190 to the 320 isn't meaningful unless you have an idea of what does that mean in terms of grade level context. And I will share with you that these are typically higher first grade. This is for native speakers. When I say that, referring to that, to middle second grade textbooks. Books. They're not textbooks. I apologize for that. My bad. So here's the first book I want to show you. And I'm going to show you screenshots inside and then show you what students are asked to do along the way to support the development of this ultimate project they will present. Now, I have a lot going on the screen. Underneath the things that I've added, like the speech bubble on the left and the little dictionary on the right, is actually a screenshot from the book. One of the first book I'm showing you. It's just a single page from the book. What I want you to see from this page is there's not a lot of text. There's a lot of cognates with Spanish, which is beautiful in terms of developing English also. The grammatical structures are simple. You can see that. And I wanted you to get a sense of that first, again, for lower level early learners of English. On the top left of the screen where I have the blue speech bubble, I want you to get a sense of what the students will be asked to do when they interact with this book, because we don't want them to just take this book and do with it as they wish. We want to give them more guidance with this book so that we know that they will develop language from it because we're helping them interact with it. So the first step students need to take is, in fact, to listen to, these books all have audios, and read the book. And the audio tracks with the text on the screen, so you know that. You can see down on the bottom the toolbar that shows you its audio. I had it turned off when I was capturing this screenshot, though. The second point I always ask students to do is to highlight words that they don't know yet in English. So even if they look at it and they know what it is because it's a cognate, I ask them to highlight it because we want them to be fully functional in vocabulary in English, just like they are, of course, in Spanish, right? So that's a really important thing. And you can see I've highlighted in yellow those 4 words that are cognates. Just, it's very easy to do. And the tools with this digital book series allow you to do that very simply, just like actually my Kindle does for me. And the next thing is I want you to look on the right side of the screen because I've used a tool called a journal tool. You see that that's in white up on the toolbar on the right. I've used that journal tool to create a personal dictionary for the student. And I ask my students always to enter the words they highlighted first into that personal dictionary. It's a live dictionary for the individual student. Okay, this is only one student's dictionary. And then I ask that student to at least get a translation on words he or she may not yet know for sure in English. Now, these are cognates and it's pretty easy, but I wanted to give you a sense of that. So I literally typed those in. I, of course, had to go to a translator, just obviously, so you know. And if they're bad translations, that's on me. Just so you know, that's also my mistake. But I want to share that with you openly because I think it's important that, all of us who are language learners know that there's a continual learning that goes along with it. And I love the ability to be open with my colleagues like you, who are also language learners, language lovers, language teachers. So that's the first thing I ask students to do. And they pick up on this very, very quickly, very quickly. And they do it without even thinking at some point. They're so good at this. But there is a really important reason for it, and that is we don't want students to just tune out as they listen to and watch the text go by on the screen. We really want them interacting with it because that's how they learn to learn them long-term, the words long-term. The one other thing I want to share with you is I have purposely alphabetized the words. That's really important because dictionaries are in alphabetical order. And this is that student's dictionary, which is why I'm calling it my dictionary, that one individual student. All right, so let's go to another page then. This is from the same book, that's Velociraptor still. Notice the dictionary came back. Even though I turned the page, the dictionary is still there. But the next thing for this project that I ask students to do is to collect information from the pages that they want to use in their presentation. Remember, up front, we share with students what they're going to be asked to do. Okay, so I want you to know that. Notice I have a little sticky note there, a Post-it note, that also is from this digital book series. And I just typed in there, it was a small dinosaur. Now, I could have obviously typed Velociraptor was a small dinosaur, but notice how I just simplified it there. And those are things your students can do based on what they see as their need. And you, by the way, before I forget, you as the teacher can always go in and see all of these things. So I want to share that before I move on. This is also the same book, and you can see I'm building as it goes through the pages. At this point, the student decided, oh, maybe I need to put that in a sentence there to remind me of how I use a simile, because one of the grammatical structures I showed you was going to be focused on in the plan was not just simple past tense, but in fact similes. And so that's why this is a live document that goes with the student. This is so important. And I love it. As a language teacher, doesn't get better than that for me. All right, let's go to the next book. Now, I have to share with you something kind of embarrassing. When I was preparing for this today, I went back into the books to update some slides that I had previously created and listened to it also. And not being an expert in dinosaurs, I have to tell you that I didn't know how to pronounce this word in English. And forever I have mispronounced it. And when I listened to it, I realized, oh my gosh, that's why listening matters for all of us learning new words. Had I ever used that word and mispronounced it with someone who knew it, I would have been so embarrassed. But again, that listening when you're an early learner or it's a new word, hearing it is amazing. So that just happened to me about 2 hours ago. So anyway, let's look inside this book. Now, these books are a series of books. And you can see, look, there's the same text that you saw on page 5 on the previous book. The rest of the text in the books is different, but the intro is the same because it's always giving context. And I chose these specifically for this presentation because they were a series of books, and I knew I would be able to show you how it carries from one book to the other. You don't have to select a series in your projects. I just wanted to give you this example by doing it that way. Again, here's another one. Notice I've collected more information. It's Diplodocus, by the way, now that I know how to pronounce that. I added another note. Again, you, the teacher, can see it. These notes in these dictionaries that the student is working on. The important thing is the student is using this to collect information for the presentation that will occur at the end of this. Here's another one, same page. Diplodocus was as heavy as, notice, simile. Collecting those is really nice, and the text is not overwhelming to students. You can see how early learners could use this. Even though they're still learning English, notice there are high frequency words in it, and there are, of course, cognates. And the grammatical structures are not overly complex. All right, let's go to Brachiosaurus. Once again, notice the dictionary is still with me, and I haven't added more words yet because the words that I'm encountering now either already tended to be in my dictionary or they were words I knew because they were high frequency words. Notice long legs. I haven't highlighted anything there because as an early student, I probably will already know that. But if I don't, I can look it up and put it in my dictionary. And that's a really important point. One of the things I always found difficult as a language learner myself was I would feel embarrassed when I compared myself to other students in the class who tended to have more vocabulary than I did. And I did feel really embarrassed about it. But this, of course, didn't exist. You can see my age. This did not exist when I was learning languages. But that's one of the things I love about this is that this is personal to the student. And that's a really big thing in learning, making sure we all feel good about what we're doing and knowing it's meeting our needs. So here's another one. Notice here, I added some words here. And again, I've re-alphabetized. You can see that. The building and floors were not in there before. What I will share with you also is that if there's a point where the student recognizes, lizard, I have that word. I know that word. I don't need it in there. You can delete that word. And that's the nice thing about this. It's a live dictionary. It's so much different than trying to collect new words in a journal, which all of us in my generation did. We tried to save words for ourselves so that we would learn them. But the reality of that was it's very difficult to go back. You can't re-alphabetize. You're not going to rewrite them all the time. It's just not practical. This is practical. Neck, I included that. Student may already know it. I put it in just in case as my example here. All right, the other thing I wanted to show you on this book was all of these books also end up with where these fossils have been found. And I love that because notice how all of a sudden this is extending to geography. You can see it's not just about the topic of dinosaurs, which certainly could fall in the science category, but it's also extending to geography, and I love that. One more Triceratops, so I can move a little more quickly through this for you because you'll understand the pattern. I like this one. I picked this one out purposely because this goes back to the importance of opportunity to interact with authentic materials that are okay for the student's level. Frill is such a low frequency word. It will never appear in a language text, ever. And that's the beauty of being able to access authentic texts with students who are even in early stages of language learning. You take advantage of everything they are learning from their language text and then add to it authentic books at the right level to give them even more opportunity. Here we go, horns. I added that one too, because one of the reasons I added horns was not because I didn't think students may not know the word horn, because certainly musical instruments are introduced early on in language texts and definitely in picture dictionaries. I did it because this was a different meaning of the word horn. And so, those are very difficult to encounter in language texts and in picture dictionaries. So that's why I chose that word and put it on there. Fossils, academic word, love it. This is the picture of transitioning your students from not just learning English to a future where they can use it in their careers someday. All right, so now let's go to the projects. Okay, and the two projects, excuse me, I'll back up. That was the input for students, and you can see that's asking them to do quite a bit. But those books are very short books. I want you to know that they are, in terms of listening, maybe 5 minutes. So these are not long books because we don't want to overwhelm students. We want to provide them with the input that is necessary for achieving and completing this project, but we don't want to overwhelm ever. So here are the two projects that they're going to do along the way. So the input was the books and what we've asked them to do with the books. The projects are graphic organizers and a poster. Now, I created very quickly 2 graphic organizers as examples to show you. You can do a lot of other things, of course, but I just wanted to give you a couple of examples because remember in the outcome itself, the students are eventually going to present to the class. So they're collecting this knowledge along the way. They're building language and collecting knowledge along the way for that project purposely. And here, I've only focused on the one book, Velociraptor. You can see it at the top left of the screen. And I'm using this as a quasi-formative assessment. What this gives me, the teacher, is an idea of how my students are doing using this past tense that is carried all through these books, because by default, books written about dinosaurs are going to be in the past tense. Okay, so I've asked the students to describe the velociraptor in complete sentences. And this gives me a chance to see how they're doing in that. Again, this is really important because this gives me an idea along the way. Are they making gains from this? So notice they're not saying it has sharp teeth. That would be a present tense. They're saying it had sharp teeth. It had a long tail. Not that it has sharp teeth is not grammatically correct. It's not the past tense that we use when we talk about something that occurred in the past. So that's the reason for me this is really important. It's a very simple kind of formative assessment for you, the teacher. And notice it's productive. It's requiring writing from the students. I did the same thing with Brachiosaurus. I asked them to write complete sentences. And what I found working with students is when I do similar activities like this, where a similar repetitive outcome, like complete sentence on a specific topic over books that are related, I find that the students then tend to move forward in complexity of the sentences as they become more confident and are able to recall what they've read in a book. So notice that this has more complexity to it, more information, and that is actually very typical of students. They actually are growing in their language and their ability to produce and write because of what they're exposed to. And again, this is kind of a formative assessment. Now, the other reason I wanted to show you this is the last bubble on the right. Notice the past tense that is used in that sentence. Fossils have been found. Now, that is tense that early learners are not going to be focused on yet or taught in early textbooks. But this is exposure to it. And the nice thing about that is by the time you get to those verb tenses with your students, they will have heard them before, they will have written them before, and it gives them a pattern on which to build. So it's like an automatic advance organizer, if you will, a front loading, if you will, for your students of what's to come without expecting perfect production or even use of it. This student just decided to use that. He or she had learned it, Jorge, he had learned it from the books he had read. So I wanted to share that with you. It's another advantage of the authentic materials, authentic books with students, but again, really controlling for where they are. So the next thing then is this poster. And I'm calling it a poster. It can be done in a lot of ways. There's certainly a lot more technology today than in an actual physical poster board, but I set it up like that for this presentation so that you can imagine other ways to do this. But after the students read the books and complete the graphic organizers, we want them to fill in this poster. We want them to complete it with the information they have collected while they're reading the books. So you can see this is how this all builds on each other. Okay, and you can also see that I have the Velociraptor column filled in. Notice I decided what I was going to ask for my students to report on, where fossils were found, the size of the dinosaur, tell me about either the tail or the neck, because I'll tell you the book tends to tell you about one or the other. The books do. What kind of teeth do they have? These are the topics that are repetitive through these books. And what kind of food do they eat? So you can see that, and students here have started to fill in that poster. And then they're going to use that poster. So I will remind you that I have students work in groups for this because it's very good for them interactively. I find that it gives them the opportunity to communicate with each other in English about this topic. I know for me, when I taught and when I was a student, especially in early stages of language learning, it's so hard to stay in the target language when you're an early learner. I mean, in my case and in my students' case, we just break down too quickly. We don't have enough vocabulary. But here, the topics are very narrow and focused, and they've been provided with all that vocabulary and grammatical structure and how do you say it through those books first. So that's why I'll come back to why, for me, providing comprehensible input in these projects is so important, because that's how you help move students forward and really prepare them for the outcome product itself. So the outcome is going to be a presentation to the class. And this is, obviously I had to use graphics for this. But you can see I'm showing you now the poster. And again, low tech, certainly I just want to be obvious about that. You have other ways to do that with technology today that I wanted to just make sure that depending on your situation in technology. If you didn't have high tech, you could see a poster board would do that. If you do have high tech, then you can do it that way, which is fabulous. And you can see the students are presenting to the class what they learned from those books. And that's the thing that's really important, because by the time we ask them to do that, we know they have had so much input specifically about these topics. We've given them input, we've had them work with the input, we've given them the opportunity to do productive writing, engage with each other in conversation and communicative activities. See, all of these start to build in terms of getting a really good outcome for project-based learning. And that's why you can see now why, for me, extensive reading is a real asset in project-based learning. The thing that you can see also is this is allowing them to engage with their classmates. So classmates may ask questions of them, certainly what we would want to have happen. And one of the questions first would be, why is there no information about teeth for 3 of the dinosaurs? And there's not in the books. Believe it or not, 3 of the books do not include information about the teeth. But then when we ask students to look at the food that the different dinosaurs eat, it becomes obvious that the animals, the dinosaur with sharp teeth eats small animals. Then the implication is the other dinosaurs certainly do not have sharp teeth. What kind of teeth they have, I don't know, but they're not sharp, or the book would have said it. And so that allows for conversation. And notice it actually allows to go one step further beyond conversation to critical thinking. That's a real step forward in language learning. We all know that moving from learning language to thinking in language to using language is huge. And that's the whole point of this project for me. It is helping students, supporting students in that journey, and doing it by being very specific in how we control for the input, we control for the project, we make sure that it's appropriate to our students, and we use authentic materials. It's a real asset in doing that. So the last question I thought if I were listening to this presentation, what if I have older students who are at higher levels of proficiency? And staying with this theme, even though you have all kinds of themes you could go to, I just wanted to show you a couple of book pages from higher level books. Remember, I told you these books were middle first grade, late first grade, middle second grade for native English speakers. For students at higher CEFR levels, these books, same topics, notice Velociraptor. These books are middle fourth grade for native English speakers. And so while actually there's not a lot of text on the page, which you might expect, the vocabulary and grammatical structures are much, much more complex, but still they serve the same purpose. So wanted to, share that with you. And then there's another one, Diplodocus. Same, notice this was a series also. You can see how those 2 books look alike. So I wanted to share that with you before wrapping up. And in the wrap up, what I wanted to share with you is what I said previously, and that has to do with why I love the combination of project-based learning and extensive reading. They are just a perfect match, in my opinion. And I also wanted to kind of simplify what I showed you so that you could see that it's not a ridiculous ask. So for the students who use those resources, it's a 3-step process. You know, they select books, or you can select them for them. Okay. But they have to take the books and somehow select, and you have lots of ways of doing that. I showed where the students selected the books that were given to them. Okay. Then the students listen to and read the book. Notice all of that student work on the left side though. And it's not a heavy load. I do promise you that. They highlight unknown words. I recommend they create a bilingual dictionary when they create a dictionary, and they take notes. So you can see that student work. Then, also student work. They use the notes that for collecting information. They complete the graphic organizers. That is something that you would set up. And then they fill in a table that they would set up. So you can see how this is really something that the load is on students, because up front you have taken the time to make sure that what you're asking them to do is realistic given their language proficiency levels and interest, etc. And then finally, the students are going to use the table as a poster in some form, and they're going to present to the class. So this for me is really meaningful. And for me, that's what language is all about. Language is about meaning. Those of us being together, sharing time together, sharing thoughts, sharing expertise, and making a difference in the lives of our students. So I want to thank you for this time today. And I'm more than happy to take questions, anything you would like that would be useful.
Carol, thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for your webinar. It was really really good, and I actually learned a lot. And it's something that I always tell my teachers, or when I train teachers, that myON is a little bit just beyond reading books. And I think that you explained it in the best way possible: formative assessment, the way you use the projects, the notes. I don't know. You couldn't have explained it better, I think.
Thank you, because I sometimes worry about that, right? It's some all of us know in doing presentations that if we overwhelm, if we give too much, then it's so, but it is a super tool. Super.
I love myON. It's actually one of my favorite platforms.
I actually read Spanish books on myON.
Do you really?
Yes, ma'am, I do. Mm-hmm.
That's good to know. Good to know. Okay, Carol. So we do have a couple of questions. There's a question over here, and it's from Claudia Rios, and she says, "How to promote extensive reading in large groups, over 40 students, especially when they don't matter learning English. I think that they don't care about learning English."
Oh yeah. Well, that's a super question. So I'll go after the large groups first. That's why for me, I have to break it down into smaller groups. I just have to, because what I found both when I was a student and when I taught, and I taught a lot of years, and I was a student a lot of years too, was that if the group was too large, only 3 people maybe would do the work, and everyone else would just, yeah. And then that doesn't help everyone. And our goal is to help our students. The trick I find, I'll tell you, this is what finally I got better at with respect to reading, was asking them what they were really interested in. I learned never to ask a student, "What do you like to read?" Because often that was very naive on my part, but often the answer I would get was, "I don't like to read. This is hard work. I'm busy." I would get all of those things. "I have other homework." And I thought, well, then that was me asking the question wrong. So I find that the important thing there is to learn what the student is really interested in. And the beauty of myON is there are 6,000 books? I don't know. There's a lot of books. And that allows you to go first for what a student is interested in. And then consider the student's English proficiency level. So if we're talking, you know, CEFR A1, A2, then you really have to go and look yourself, open books. Go in, type in the topic your student is interested in, and then open books. And I suggest, if it's a lower level proficiency, that you actually look for books that are really, well, if you're in Lexiles, you would look for books that are in the 200 or lower levels initially. And then as the teacher, I promise you, you still have to open the book and see if it's a book that you think your student would A, be interested in, because you never know by titles, and B, is the right level for the student. The second thing I'm going to tell you before I say anything else is, or forget, excuse me, before I forget, the second thing is nonfiction is so much easier to read than fiction. So much easier. There's no flowery language in nonfiction. And one of the challenges is providing students with books they actually can understand. And once they read books they understand, then that gets their attention, especially if you've picked a topic they like. So that for me is what I've had to learn in it. And it really is a lot of paying attention to my students along the way, because I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Carol. That's new for me. That's actually very new for me. Actually, fiction was a little bit easier, but it's true what you say. I mean, fiction, you have to try to imagine what the author wanted to explain, and nonfiction is just facts.
It is. It's more factual, and it lets you build language. And then what I've had some students do is go from nonfiction on a topic and then go to fiction on it if they want to read fiction. So I kind of reverse it. It's just the language in me, the language person in me that's like, okay, how am I going to make this work for my student? Because it doesn't matter what I do if it doesn't work for my student.
It's true. It's very, very true what you're saying. And it makes sense. Well, Carol, there aren't any more questions, but I truly do want to thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, for your webinar. I think I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I surely did. I learned a lot.
I'm so happy to hear that. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you so much. So thank you, everybody who joined us, everybody who was here. And I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. And see you in our next webinar.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much.
It has been a long road and full of challenges. Being bilingual on graduation day has been one of my greatest achievements, because I now have the tool set to go on reaching all the objectives I might set for myself in the future. A world of opportunities opened up to me when I started studying with Richmond Solution. I was really able to learn autonomously. I could study at home, in the library, or in the classroom. I could dive into the book, or by being connected to the internet, I could explore fascinating activities that empowered my English skills. I was able to instantly access the answers as they were only a click away. I loved working in a team. My friends and I had great fun as we learned. I learned a lot from them, and I know that they learned something from me. The exams were always challenging, but thanks to the practice that was constantly available on the digital platforms, we were fully up to speed to meet these challenges. I am really going to miss my school.
Richmond Solution helped us hugely to transform the English program in our school. We have now got the best tools to guarantee the best learning. Let me show you. Part of the process gives us access to a coach who builds our confidence, as well as training courses to better our abilities and to continue our improvement. Yes, good teachers are always keen to learn more. As we live in the cloud, as we say in this connected world, we have digital resources to improve our classes and which allow our students to learn from anywhere in the world, even quite literally in the clouds if they are on board an airplane. Through the Richmond Test Manager and Learning Analytics, we have a variety of possibilities to test, validate, and monitor students' progress. It is amazing to be able to see how your students are learning and to have the evidence of their learning at your fingertips. This really does make us very happy indeed.